Waiters, have you ever had to call the cops on your table? I was working the dinner shift at this family restaurant downtown when this couple came in around 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. Nothing seemed weird at first. The place was pretty empty, just a few other tables with families finishing up their meals. The guy, probably mid-30s with a beard, ordered a beer and kept checking his phone every few seconds. The woman looked younger, maybe early 20s, and seemed really nervous. She had dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. She kept looking around the restaurant like she was scared of something. Her leg was bouncing under the table nonstop. When I brought their drinks, I noticed her hands were shaking as she reached for her water glass. She mumbled a quiet thank you, but wouldn't make eye contact. The guy, let's call him Rick, was being super controlling from the start. He ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted. When she tried to say something about wanting a salad instead, he cut her off and said, "You'll like the chicken parmesan, trust me. You need to eat more anyway." The way he said it made my skin crawl. That's when I started paying closer attention to their table. During their meal, Rick kept getting up to take phone calls. He'd walk outside to the parking lot, always taking his time. Every single time he left the table, the woman would look toward the front exit like she was thinking about running, but she never moved, just sat there staring at the door until he came back. When Rick returned from his third phone call, he seemed more agitated than before. He started talking to her in this low, angry voice. I was refilling water at the table next to them, so I could hear some of it. Phrases like, "You better not try anything stupid," and "Remember what happens when you don't listen to me." The woman looked absolutely terrified. She was barely touching her food, just moving it around her plate. She kept staring down at her hands like she was trying to disappear. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Every time Rick got up for these phone calls, he took her purse with him, said he was keeping it safe from thieves, but she clearly wasn't okay with it. She'd reach for it automatically when he stood up, then catch herself and put her hands back in her lap. During his fourth phone call, I saw my chance. I walked over to refill her water glass and quietly asked, "Are you doing okay tonight?" She looked up at me with tears starting to form in her eyes and whispered, "I can't leave this place." I leaned down, pretending to wipe the table, and asked, "Do you need help?" She nodded slightly and said in the smallest voice, "He has my car keys, my phone, my wallet, everything. I don't even know what city we're in right now." My heart started pounding. I told her I'd be right back with some fresh bread and went straight to the kitchen. I grabbed my manager Dave and explained the whole situation. Dave took one look at the table through the kitchen window and said, "Call the cops right now." I dialed 911 from the kitchen phone and explained that we had a possible kidnapping situation. The dispatcher asked me to describe both people and said officers were already on their way. She told me to keep the table occupied and not let them leave if possible. When Rick came back from his call, I could tell something had changed. He seemed more urgent, kept looking at his watch and checking his phone. The woman looked even more scared than before. He called me over and said they needed to leave immediately, wanted the check right away. I told him our credit card machine was running slow tonight and it would take a few more minutes to process. He got frustrated and said, "How long exactly?" I said maybe 5 more minutes. He slammed his hand on the table, making the woman jump. That's when I noticed her trying to get my attention when Rick was looking at his phone. She mouthed the words, "Help me please," and I gave her the smallest nod to let her know I understood. Rick was getting more impatient by the minute. He kept standing up and sitting back down, checking the parking lot through the window. Finally, he stood up and said, "Forget this stupid check, here's $50, and threw the money on the table. He grabbed the woman's arm roughly and started pulling her toward the front door. She looked back at me with pure terror in her eyes, like this might be the last chance anyone would see her alive. Just then, 3 police officers walked through the front entrance. Rick saw them immediately, and his whole demeanor changed. He let go of the woman's arm and tried to act casual, like nothing was wrong. But the officers came straight to their table. Turns out the woman, her name was Ashley, had been reported missing by her roommate 3 days earlier. Rick had been holding her against her will, driving her around to different towns and keeping her in various motels. The cops found her phone, ID, and car keys in Rick's jacket pocket, along with zip ties and duct tape in his car outside. Ashley later told police that Rick had been threatening to hurt her little sister if she tried to escape or call for help. She'd been praying that anyone would notice something was wrong and step in. The officers arrested Rick right there in our dining room. Ashley completely broke down crying, kept thanking me and Dave for paying attention to the details. She said most people just mind their own business and ignore the obvious signs. Rick ended up getting 15 years for kidnapping, assault, and making terroristic threats. Ashley moved back to her hometown to be closer to her family and get therapy. She still sends me a Christmas card every year, thanking me for trusting my instincts that night and not just assuming everything was fine.